Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to our young adult class. And I am here for another lesson for tonight, for our Thursday night class. First off, I hope everybody got to watch the live stream yesterday for the Wednesday night Bible class at Sugarland. It was a great lesson. And I hope you also join us for Sunday morning when we do our main service. And I'll also be uploading another video. I might try to live stream this one. I'm not sure. But I may send y'all messages about live streaming on Sunday morning when I get it together. But today, the lesson for tonight is working from home. That's the lesson for tonight. When I was trying to plan this lesson, I was struggling to decide what to talk about. There's a lot of lessons I had, but I wasn't sure. Some weren't polished well. Some I didn't know if I was ready to do it yet. So I was really struggling what to do tonight. And I had a friend that used to tell me, whenever you're struggling with doing a lesson, just learn to preach to yourself pretty much. He was a preacher, but he was saying, if you don't know what to preach, always preach to yourself. Always talk about something you're struggling with, and then you can make a message out of that. So for me, the struggle I have right now is working from home. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm a person that kind of does extremes. I can either work super hard or I can be chilled super hard, if that makes sense. So basically, I can be, if you give me an assignment, I can work on it all day. I will do everything I can do to accomplish that goal. But if I'm in chill mode, I'm in chill mode. You don't bother me. Don't call me. I'm going to do what I want to do that day. If it's Netflix, I'm watching Netflix the whole day. If it's video games, I'm playing video games the whole day. If it's just walking around the park all day, that's what I'm going to do all day. So I tend to go, whatever I'm doing, I tend to be very narrow-minded, and I go full out. I'm going to go do that and nothing else, pretty much. That's my mindset. So the struggle I have when it comes to working from home is that I miss going into the office. I actually like going because, through the coronavirus, a lot of us, some of you are not working at all, but some are working from home. I used to go to work and I like to wake up early, get dressed, go into the office. And when I go to the office, my mindset is just focus on whatever work I need to do that day. I'm in work mode. And then when I come home, I don't answer my phone. I don't check emails. I'm in complete relaxation mode. And that's how I kind of got in the habit of, in my career, going to the job and then coming home and just relaxing. But because of coronavirus, now we're all working from home. I have no choice, but I have to kind of get still in that work mode, even though I'm not actually in the office. I still have to turn work mode on. And that's kind of hard for me to do because, at home I have all my entertainment. I have my TV here. I have my video games here. I have the park I can walk to right across the street I can go walk. So it's easy for me to be very idle and lazy and ignore the actual work I need to do for my job because it's very difficult to do when you're not in the office, not in the work setting. So the thing I'm struggling with is how to be productive from home. Now, how this relates to us in the church is that if you think about it, church itself is a work. We all, as Christians, have obligations, we have duties, we have things we're supposed to be doing, and we only meet probably, 3 or 4 hours a week. We meet on Sunday morning, worship, that's like an hour, hour and a half, maybe evening, another hour, and then Wednesday night Bible class. But the rest of the time, we're essentially away from the building. We're away from our brothers and sisters in Christ. So in a way, we're already working from home as Christians. We're always working from home basically because we don't get opportunity. We're limited on opportunities to come to the building to worship together and do our work together. So how do we be productive, not just in our physical work, but in our spiritual work also? How do we still be productive even though we're away from others and not necessarily around the workplace as often? I think the best person to show us how to do this is Nehemiah. If you're not familiar with the Old Testament and old Jewish history, Nehemiah was a person, he was the cupbearer of the king of Persia. Now, cupbearer basically is a person that will, or wine taster sometimes, cupbearer, wine taster. But basically, that person was a very high position because what they did was they would drink and eat the food of the king to make sure the food wasn't poisoned, and then they would give it to the king. So they would pretty much, they're food tasters. They'll taste the food, make sure it wasn't poison or anything. So basically, they're risking their life every time they eat, essentially, because the king has many enemies. And they would make sure the food that the king ate wasn't bad for him and that he could eat it, and that way he wouldn't die. Now, originally, if you're familiar with the Israelites are descended from Abraham, and Abraham is the one God gave the promise to all nations. Through your seed, all nations will be blessed. And you know the story of Abraham. He came to Canaan, lived his life, and then eventually his people ended up going to Egypt for many centuries, which is why we have the Exodus, the book of Exodus, where they leave Egypt after the plagues and everything, cross the Red Sea, in the wilderness for many years, and they finally reached the promised land. So the children of Israel, of course, at this time, had been in the promised land for many years. But because of their sins, God allowed them to be conquered by their enemies, the most notably the Babylonians. So at this time of Nehemiah, many of the children of Israel were taken out of the land of Israel and were in other nations. They were in Babylon, in Persia, and other places eastward because they were taken out from Israel. And there's a small remaint in the land of Israel, usually a small group, and they're usually living in poverty. They rebel multiple times. Don't have, everything's in ruin. Everything, the walls are broken and everything. So pretty much the children of Israel are in a bad state. But Nehemiah is a Jew living in a Persian court away from his people, very high up in government. So when we look at the story of Nehemiah, Nehemiah gets word from his brethren about the state of Israel at the time. And we'll go ahead and read it. I'll be going to the book of Nehemiah, chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. And I'll be reading the King James Version. And it reads, "The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah. And it came to pass in the month of Chislev, in the 20th year, I was in Shushan the palace, and Hanani, one of my brethren, came, he and a certain men of Judah. And I asked them about concerning the Jews that had escaped, which were left of the captivity, and concerning Jerusalem." So Nehemiah is asking about the people that are still in Jerusalem after the Babylons have taken a lot of the people out of the city, that captured them and put them in other places. "And they said unto me, the remain that are left of the captivity there in the province are in a great affliction and reproach." So they're in a very bad state. "The wall of Jerusalem also is broken down, and the gates thereof are burned with fire." So Nehemiah hears this report, and he learns that, his people are in a bad state. The walls are broken down, which walls at that time, especially at that time, were very significant because that was your protection, right? Invading army, the way you defend yourself was have big walls or big towers, castles, everything like that. So Israel is in poverty, it's afflicted, and it has no protection. It's just open, exposed to anybody that wants to come and do them wrong. And Nehemiah hears this, and he's very upset by it, and he wants to do something about it. So if we skip over to chapter 2, and we're going to read verse 6 through 8 for there, we'll see what he decides to do about it. Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 6. "And the king said unto me," the queen also sent by him, "For how long shall thy journey be? Wilt thou return? So it pleased the king to send me, and I set him a time." So Nehemiah asked the king. They had this dialogue where the king notices Nehemiah was sad, and the king asked him, "What's wrong with you?" And the Nehemiah says, hurt because my people are in a bad state. So the king decides to send them back to his people for a while. Verse 7. Moreover, I said unto the king, if it please the king, let letters be given me to the governors beyond the river, that they may convey me over till I come into Judea. And a letter unto Asper, the keeper of the king's forest, that he may give me timber to make beams for the gates of the palace, which appertain to the house, for the wall of the city, and for the house that I shall enter into. And the king granted me, according to the good hand of my God upon me. So Nehemiah, he sees the state of Israel very bad, and he asks the king permission to go back to his people. He wants to rebuild the wall, and he asked the king permission to get timber and letters of safe passage. So he says, I want it to be legal. I get documentation that I can go and do this work pretty much. So he got a lot of, I guess you could say, legal protection, from the king. He got the king's goodwill, and he gets the material he's going to need, which is, timber. I imagine they made brick at some point, or maybe the walls were built out of wood. I don't remember the structure at that time. I think they probably would have made something out of it. But anyway, so he pretty much gets a lot of materials and things he needs. And then Nehemiah, if you're familiar with the story, he goes to Jerusalem. He ends up starting the work. He faces some adversity. A lot of people didn't like the fact he was building the wall. They tried to stop him. He had to get the people to be armed and everything. But the thing I want you to notice is verse 6 of chapter 4. Let's skip to Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 6. So we built the wall, and all the wall was joined together unto the half thereof, for the people had a mind to work. And if we continue through, we don't have time to read the whole story, but if we read the whole story, we know that Nehemiah was successful in building the wall and building up the city of Jerusalem for his people. And he did it because he was prepared, he had materials, and he had people who had a mind to work. So then we come to the question for us, what does this have to do with us working from home? What does this have to do with us, not being able to meet as a congregation? Even when we did meet on a regular before this coronavirus, we still only got 3 or 4 hours together. So most of the time we're working from home, or we're doing God's work from home for the most part. How does this relate to how we be productive when we're not at work? And I think for 3 main reasons. When you look at the story of Nehemiah, he went through a process. There's 3 things that he did to make it work. First, he made a plan. We see this early in the chapter where he sees the problem. He says, we don't have a wall, we don't have a city, so I'm going to make a plan. And as we go through this Christian lifestyle, we need to have plans. We need to have goals. Goals are not just for work or for careers or for school. Goals are also for us as Christians. We should have Christian goals. We should be making plans for growth. We should make our own, track record of what we want to do. So first thing Nehemiah did was he made a plan. Second, he gathered the materials for that plan. A lot of us, the reason we don't succeed in certain things or we don't succeed our goals as Christians is because we don't even know the right materials to get. We don't gather the necessary tools to be successful. For example, let's say you want to learn how to memorize a lot of verses. Let's say your goal is to memorize 10 verses so you can have those off the top of your head for memory, and that's your goal as a Christian. You want to memorize 10 verses pretty soon. Well, how do you do that? Well, the first thing is you're going to need a Bible. That's the material you need, right? If you don't have a Bible, you can't remember the verses because you can't read. Maybe also, if you're a person that gets distracted easily like I do, maybe you need to go somewhere isolated. So for me, I like to take walks outside a lot. or go to the park or whatnot, because I mean there's people still there, but it's kind of gets me away from the TV, from the computer, from the laptop, so I can focus better. So maybe that's also your material. Maybe you need to isolate yourself a little bit. Maybe you need to get in a certain clothing to make you feel professional. I used to make fun of my dad for this, but now I do the same thing. My dad, whenever I seen him work from home or he had something he needed to do on the weekend, he would always get fully dressed to go into his office at our house to do his work. And I used to think, like, why are you getting dressed? I mean, you're not going anywhere. You're not going to the building. Why do you need to get dressed? But now I do the same thing because it gets me in the mode to do work because I feel, professional, I guess. So I actually prefer to get dressed. If I know I'm doing something from home, I like to actually get dressed. So that's the materials I need. I needed clothing. I needed to wear something. So Nehemiah, he knows he's building a wall. He needs wood. He needs timber. He needs all that. So he gathers the material needed to do his plan. And us as Christians also need to make sure we have the right tools so we can succeed whatever our goal is. Rather than memorizing verses, maybe we want to stop lying. Maybe we have a lying problem. We want to stop lying. Maybe we have a laziness, which is what I'm talking about in this subject. We need to know the materials or the things we need so we can succeed in that goal. The third thing we can take from Nehemiah is that he actually executed the plan. Sometimes the best way to get something done is you're gonna have to move. You're just gonna have to get up and actually do it. Sometimes you don't even have to take much. For me, the hardest part is getting out of bed. But once I get out of bed, I'm out of bed. I get the ball rolling. What's that saying? That a journey of 1,000 miles or something starts with the first step. I can't remember don't quote me on that. I can't remember exactly what it says, but sometimes just taking one step is all you need to do. Sometimes maybe your goal is, let's say you want to be able to run a mile under a certain amount of time, right? Well, maybe you're not a good runner. Maybe the first step for you is to walk a lap. Maybe you do that one day, and then the next day you do 2 laps. Whatever it is, but at some point you're going to have a mind to work. You're going to have to execute. You're going to have to execute your plan. You're going to have to get out and do something. And I think in our lives, if we set goals, we have a plan, we gather the materials for that plan, and then we actually just we actually do that plan, we'll always be successful. Because the reason we have the Bible, and God gave us the Bible, gave us his son, gave us the word, is because he wants us to be successful. God didn't make life. I think he meant life to have some struggle. Like he doesn't give us everything easily, but he does leave us the tools to make us successful in life. He wants us to get out there and work and accomplish our goals, us to enhance our goals. And I think as we work from home, we're not meeting in church. That's both spiritually and also physically. We're not going into our jobs right now because of everything's on lockdown, but we're also not going into church to get our spiritual work done because we can't physically, worship together. That we make plans, we gather materials for our plans, and we execute that plan, and we will still be successful even while we're going through this lockdown, and we will accomplish whatever goals we want to accomplish. We can build anything, to be honest. We can make anything. Just Nehemiah, his goal was to build a wall. But whatever your goals are, God will give it to you. You can do it. You can build it. You just got to take the right steps to do it. You just got to make a plan. You got to gather your materials, get prepared, get everything together, and then execute that plan, and you will always be successful when you're working from home. Well, that was the lesson tonight. I hope you enjoyed, you take it to heart. I encourage you to read the book of Nehemiah sometime. If you have time, make a plan for it. I don't think it's a really long book, but it is really a great story. So read Nehemiah sometime. But I'll see y'all again this Sunday morning, and I'll let you know if we're going to live stream or if I'm just going to record again. All right.